Oh, good. Perfect. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Definitely is great to see that everyone's really interested in learning about this and contributing more to the RTAC. So, just a quick tidbit about what we're going to be covering today. Obviously, the S1 portion of the new Portland documents and the SOP/LOA. This session will primarily focus on the SOP and the LOA, although I'd probably say that most of the stuff would be LOA, PAD-PDX LOA. So again, if you want to follow along, I'll be screen sharing, or you can open up the VPDX 7110, the SOP, and the PAD-PDX LOA, and follow along with what we're covering. And just a quick heads up on what we're covering, or a preview. Primarily, it's going to be routing requirements and altitude requirements, so that include the initial altitudes and cruise altitude, final altitude requirements, the ground taxiing requirements / limitations. So what taxiways can fit people and their wingspan limitations, basically. And then the two plans that primarily apply for or two ground / delivery operations, which are the fan plan and the weather plan. And then gate hold procedures, which is a new position of Portland. So obviously, did anyone have any questions coming into this session? Just with the read of the any of the documents, you can raise your hand or whatever, and then I can bring you up. Or you can send it in the chat if you'd like. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, at any time if you have a question during the presentation or session, you can just send a message in the chat, and someone will answer it. So getting right into it, this session will definitely not be as long as probably the S2 or S3 one, simply because there aren't that many changes. I would honestly go as far to say that the job of as a ground / delivery controller really decreases with the new SOP and LOA compared to what it was before. But again, we do understand that the document can be a bit difficult to read at times, so that's the primary reason for this. So yeah, without further ado, we can start. So let's start with, I guess, in the SOP, right? So the positions, I guess, and the definitions. So obviously, this is the standard operating procedure applying to all Portland personnel, and it canceled the SOP 102, which was the prior Portland SOP. So there are two Portland tower or local positions, right? This really didn't change that much. The important thing is the names of the positions. It used to be local north, local south. We've now changed that to local control 2 and local control 1. What you're going to be seeing most of the time on the network is local control 2, which used to be, I believe, south. And local control 1 is what used to be local north. So again, local control 1 controls the north side of the airspace, and that includes the Pearson Advisory Channel, which is something we'll get into in a second. And the local control 2 controls the south, so the south runway. Obviously, ground clearance delivery didn't really change. What did get changed is clearance delivery 2, which is also called the gate hold. And we're still deciding whether the position name is going to be clearance delivery 2 or gate hold. But clearance delivery 2 primarily manages gates and does gate hold procedures. Obviously, these are some pretty important words that you should know and pretty standard and common. Abbreviations, if anybody has any questions about this, you can definitely feel free to, but the primary purpose of this isn't to cover stuff like that. So yeah, moving along. Obviously, local and everyone in the cab should be using TITLs and PDCs. Again, per the strip marking and per the facility 7210, you cannot send PDCs for revised or amended flight plans or for TMU/center reroutes. Moving on, ASDEX configuration. I know this was a question that someone had a while ago, or I think maybe a week ago, was about the names of the ASDEX configurations changing from west to east to 10 left, 10 right to 28 left, 28 right. That'll change there, just the name of it to match real world. This stuff really doesn't apply to ground / delivery operations, and that'll be covered in the S1, which is on Wednesday. Now a bit of the more important part of this for sure. So obviously, as most of you know, coming into the new SOP, right? So with the old SOP, SOP 102, it was the role of Portland clearance or Portland ground, whichever one was on, or even Portland tower, again, if neither ground or delivery were on, to give IFR clearances to Pearson area departures. And that has changed. With the new SOP, we have the addition of the Pearson advisory channel and frequency, position, I guess, which is I guess you could call it a subsidiary or a sub position of the Portland Tower. Primarily, it's going to be local one's responsibility as they control the north, but if the north one way and therefore closer to Pearson. But if it's just a single controller on, local 2 has Pearson advisory, and they're going to be kind of adding it as a frequency that they monitor and speak on with through AFV or through the CRC integration. But the big change here is that Pearson advisory now gives IFR clearances to departures out of Pearson. And they kind of replace both the role of the Portland Tracon in giving releases, but also the role of Portland delivery in giving the clearances. So S1s controlling Portland ground or Portland delivery no longer will ever speak to a Pearson IFR departure when they're on the ground. If you're working ground or local, Portland ground or local, Portland ground or delivery, and a IFR departure out of Pearson calls you up, tell them to contact tower or contact Pearson advisory 119.0. So that's really probably the biggest change, and that's the big reason why I'd say the role and duties of a ground or delivery controller at Portland has decreased. But we can cover a bit more of the rest of the SOP. So now we can talk about the taxiway limitations and restrictions. So going into this, a bit of context that's kind of helpful and necessary is mainly knowing that, number one, a 737 and an A320 both have wingspans that are less than 118 feet. So they are, they have them less than 118 feet, but more than 79 feet. So any aircraft that's really bigger than an A320 or a 737, which is probably 90% of the aircraft that you'll see, they are specifically not able to hit or go on taxi on, I guess. Obviously, Whiskey, Alpha 3, the J ramp. Let's see here. Taxiway Kilo between Victor and Alpha 4. And 118. And I believe I can actually check on this right now and provide a better, more thorough example at the end of this. I know specifically that we have a chart already made to determine how to provide, I guess, taxiway clearances to aircraft that you're not sure whether they can fit on a taxiway, and it kind of makes it a lot easier to read this table, or this, I guess, blob of text. So I'll definitely get that at the end of the session and share that out with you, because it's definitely valuable and probably easier to read and understand than reading this. Moving on. Again, this is all local stuff. Perfect. Okay, so we can talk a bit about the different plans. So obviously, fan plan. If you've read or even skimmed the SOP, there are two important, I guess, plans for delivery/ground, and that's number one, the fan plan and the weather plan. There's the boxer plan, north plan, south plan for that are also mentioned, but they primarily impact local control, and they actually only impact local control and changes local control procedures. So in this session, we really don't need to worry about that. But again, if you have a question about it, feel free to ask. So let's talk about the weather plan. So if I remember correctly, I think, yeah, okay. So now we can move on to the LOA. So some definitions before we actually get into the different plans. Obviously, noise-sensitive aircraft and non-noise sensitive aircraft are different definitions than what we had in SOP 102. But there's a very easy way to really understand that. So before, there was jet aircraft. I believe it was L and S. L was props that are more than 12,500 maximum takeoff weight. S or P, depending on when you read it, was, and what document you read, was turboprops less than 12,500 at maximum takeoff weight. So really, that's the documents, or I guess the definitions are the same between the two. This is a typo that should have been fixed. I guess I never uploaded the new version, but I will upload a new version after
12,500
after this. Yeah, it's a big turboprop. But yeah, so noise sensitive aircraft are the equivalent of L class in the prior SOP. So props that are more than 12,500 pounds, excluding King Airs. And non-noise sensitive aircraft, equivalent of the S or P class, basically turboprops and props with a maximum takeoff weight less than 12,500 pounds. And that includes Beechcraft King Airs, and a separate category is jets. So the three categories basically transferred over, but they're termed. Yeah, so again, boxer plan, but that is local procedures, so we won't really cover that here. Does anybody have any questions about what we've covered so far, or specifically this non-noise sensitive, noise sensitive jet differentiation? Moving along, we can talk about the weather plan, right? So weather plan basically changes. Weather plan actually is very similar to runway 21 operations. Primarily, it puts every single aircraft, regardless of whether they're a jet or regardless of whatever, on the Portland SID. So any Lava, Mini, Chisholm, Whammy, or Hermans will be rerouted onto the Portland SID. And the important thing is that, as this says, as Section 5 here says, PDX, that's the ground/delivery controller, must reclear all RNAV SID aircraft. So anybody that's on the Whammy 4, the Cascade 2, the Mini 5, etc., onto the Portland 2, radar vectors, they're I guess you could call it the transition, you could call it the gate, but whatever their first fix is, the RNFSID common fix. So Lava, Mini, Chisholm, Whammy, Hermans. And then direct the transition fix then as filed. And in the flight plan editor, you keep it as the RNFSID. It's a bit confusing for sure, but primarily what you just do if anytime you're in weather plane operations is clearing them via the Portland, but keeping the RNFSID in their in their flight plan. Moving on.
And we have a question here.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Noah.
All right. I'm sorry. Just to repeat what you just said. So if we are in a weather plan operations, then we won't touch their like flight plan strips in CRC, but we'll verbally give them the Portland 2 radar vectors their first common fix.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so that's basically the weather plan. It's simple, but also it's definitely weird, and I'm like there's certain parts of it that definitely confuses me. So if it confuses you, just speak up and feel free to let us know, and we can try and clarify as much as we can. But that's basically primarily what you need to know for the weather plan. Moving on, the altitude restriction. This is basically the primary, I guess, the single altitude restriction for cruising altitude that you would deal with as a ground or delivery controller. Basically, what this says is that aircraft that are filed at or below 15,000 with a filed routing entering Seattle Sector 6. I'll switch to attachment 5 in a second. An odd altitude. So assign them an odd altitude if they're below 15,000 feet and entering Sector 6. So moving to that, we can go to attachment 5. So this is Sector 6. Basically, if they're going between the, if you want to call it the, okay, question. So is the weather plan considered a route amendment? Do we tell them it's a route amendment as the Portland 2 departure? I wouldn't call it a route amendment, but if someone has an argument for why it would be, feel free to raise your hand or say in the chat. You would literally just clear them. Although it does get a bit confusing there because some pilots would completely ignore you. So yeah, I don't know. Shai, what do you think? Do you think that would be like a reroute, full route clearance, or?
So since it states in the policy that we're not changing it in the flight plan editor, then that by definition wouldn't be a route amendment. It would just be I don't even know how you would call that. Let's see, do we have the author of this in chat?
No, we don't.
No, we don't. Okay. Yeah, I honestly I don't know this. I don't know the answer to this one, my friend.
Yeah, you can. I mean, I think for ease, like, I guess you could say usability and to ensure pilots aren't confused, you definitely probably could say that it's a reroute, but just not enter the reroute into their flight plan editor. Yeah, I guess what Noah proposes is also definitely acceptable, but I think you would have free reign. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't remember specifically. Did we provide any kind of phraseology for this in the
No.
section? I didn't think so. Might be something that we look into in the future, get some clarification, and then add that as an update.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely rare that you're going to see it because if you read this above, basically what it's saying is that there are no set requirements or clear requirements on when the weather plan will be put into effect or implemented. It's really up to controller discretion, and if it affects the automatic release of departures. But yeah, we'll definitely get some proper answers on that and get back to you with that, John. Good question. Thank you. Any other questions about that? So yeah, quick tangent for the 15,000 part. Hopefully everyone understood it. I know the wording is definitely kind of confusing there, and it took me a few minutes when I first read it to understand that that's what that was saying. But basically, if they're entering, if they're leaving Portland, I guess you could call it the Columbia 235 radial to Columbia 145 radial, entering Sector 6 that way. Then they should be at an odd altitude if they're below 15,000 feet. And hopefully that's clear for everyone. But moving on, where was I? Yes, perfect. Okay. Again, the same thing it stayed the same with Salem aircraft. 5,000 is the final altitude for aircraft landing Salem. More local stuff. Okay, perfect. Fan plan. So obviously, fan plan is definitely something that's quite new and might not make sense when you first read it. But it makes a lot more sense if you consider it with the idea of like a real world situation where a lot of traffic out of Portland is Ameriflight or Empire turboprops, and they have specific needs that often can't be lumped together with the needs of jet aircraft. So, what the real world people have done is coded a specific plan that assigns all southbound non-noise sensitive aircraft. So bring that back. That's non-noise sensitive aircraft are 12. Actually, let's refer back to it. But it's the maximum takeoff weight less than 12,500, and they're turboprop, so including Beechcraft King Airs. But assign all of those aircraft. 4,000 is the initial altitude, the Portland SID, obviously, as that's the only SID that turboprops can really fly on. And the following climate heading is completely irrelevant for this session and will be covered at a later time. But the primary part of it is 4,000 feet, the Portland SID, and only for non-noise sensitive southbound departures. Again, the PDX CIC, control in charge, must coordinate it with the PAD CIC, and again, more local stuff. So you'll be told if it's fan plan, and all you really need to know is that the clear southbound turboprops less than 12,500 with an initial altitude of 4,000. So pretty simple. And I think that is basically everything except the clearance, or the initial altitudes and routing stuff for Portland. So does anybody have any questions about that? I see Trenton typing, so.
I guess while we're waiting for Trenton to finish typing there, just real quick, I know that a lot of these policy documents seem like a lot. It can seem really daunting, especially when there's a lot of words on a lot of pages. Realistically, as I started to read through them too, even when they were in their very infant stages, like once I got through it and started to think about it, it all really made sense. So really, all it's going to take is a little bit of time reading them and then asking the questions that you have. And once once you've read through them a couple of times, this will be just like second nature. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Myself, Matt, Ameya, Tanner, Hayden, any of us are more than happy to help you out at any point in time. Just pop a question. That being said, Trenton's question. I have an A320 on Portland ground right now, filed Portland 2, Battleground, Olympia 2. Does that change?
So that wouldn't really fall in the SOP portion. It would really just be preferred route, because preferred routing is, I guess, what's the arrival airport in? Is it Seattle? Yeah. So the preferred routing is Seattle, Portland 2, Cougar, Krieg, Hawk 7. But does that make a bit more sense? I guess that's just preferred routing. That's not really SOP related or LOA related.
Well, and the keyword there is preferred. It's preferred routing. If
Yeah.
you have an A320 pilot that wants to simulate that they are non-RNAV or whatever, then they want to do the Olympia 2 arrival, then you can clear them that way. That's a valid route from Portland to Seattle via the Olympia 2 arrival. So that's not an invalid route by any means. Unusual maybe, but not invalid.
Yeah. Any more questions about that, Trenton? Okay. So this table, which is attachment 3, is the final thing we're really going to cover tonight. And probably the most important tool that you have. It's really a simplified version of all the SIDs, all the departures out of Portland, and it's put into this table that's really easy to read compared to a lot of our other documents and tables. So definitely a really good resource to use. But as a delivery and ground controller, you primarily need to focus on the first 4 boxes. As the departure instructions, that's really a local thing, and as an S1 and as a ground or delivery controller, you primarily need to know the initial altitude, what procedure to give them, the departure sector, and then what type of aircraft. So I can quickly run through this. Obviously, jet north, the jet that are going to the north/hood departure sector, which should be every jet, is and that they're on the Portland 2 SID, should be assigned initial altitude 6,000. If they're on the RNAV, any RNAV, they should be 7,000. For VSOA scramble, so the key thing here is they need to be a certified VATSIM VSOA. Their initial is 9 or 1,000, and you can give them a cleared to whatever via fly runway heading if you want. So noise sensitive aircraft, this is turboprops 12,500 pounds or more. If they're going north, basically they can either go north or they can either go to the north sector or hood sector. Also Portland SID and 6,000. And again, nothing really changed here. So, John, VSOA stands for special. Oh, I'm blanking. It's like the VATSIM Military Association or whatever. I'm blanking on the exact name. If someone knows it, you can say it in chat. But special, what is it? Oh yeah, there's Landon. Yeah, there you go. Special Operations something. Here we can can someone look that up really quickly? Yeah, there you go. V military, basically. They are. Yes, thank you, Oliver. Yeah, so it's the VATSIM Special Operations Administration, which are basically military pilots who are certified, I guess, by a VSOA, which is like a military group. to fly military operations, and they, when they're scrambling to, for example, intercept someone, this is the instruction that you should give them, and they'll identify it in their remarks and tell you, hey, we're like a scramble, Trident 6 scramble or whatever. I don't know phraseology, but if you ever hear that, just know it's 9 or 1,000 and clear to wherever via fly runway heading. And moving on, non-noise sensitive, nothing really changed from what it used to be, 3,000, except if you're in the fan plan. Yeah, the Northwest Air National Guard or whatever. I haven't seen them on it forever. But fan plan is 4,000, and again, all the props should be on the Portland side. Same thing for Westflow, except it's 15,000 for the VSOA people instead of 9 or 1,000, and everything else stays the same. 2-1, as we kind of covered, as I touched on a bit earlier, for runway 21, every aircraft is going to be on the Portland side with an initial altitude of 6,000 if they're jets and noise sensitive and SOA scramble, and if they're non-noise sensitive, they're 3,000. And then again, this really didn't change anything with VFR aircraft at or below 6,000, at or below 3,500. What was the same thing as the old SOP. So yeah, that is really all that I have for this. But what I do want to show you, big thanks to Tanner who made this, but this is the kind of cheat sheet on where aircraft are allowed to be and allowed to be taxied on. And it gives you kind of the quick reference of what the wingspans are. So going from, I guess, the bottom, right? So the 118 requirement, which really is 737 that's a 737 Max, Embraer A320 can make. Alpha 3 right there is the big one, and Charlie 3. They are only accessible aircraft that are smaller than the 737, 737 Max, and A320, A321 Neo. And the next one up, Victor, taxiway Victor, really is the same thing, except 757s can taxi on taxiway Victor. But it's, other than that, it's still A321s, A320s, 737, but you get the added 757, which you can also taxi on taxiway Victor. Going up one more, taxiway Juliet, which I don't think I've ever taxied someone on, but if you have, that's quite an accomplishment. That I don't think it really impacts anything else. That's a major aircraft, yeah. Yes, Amelia, I will. Tanner, are you good with said people having it? You can DM me or send it somewhere. We'll probably link this on the yeah, exactly, on the website, as Shai said. But yeah, so 171 for taxiway Juliet, and then the green one, which is, honestly, I can't even find it. Oh, it's Charlie. So taxiway Charlie is not accessible for 747s, and hold on, let me read this for a second. Yes, yeah. So basically, it's not accessible for anything that's larger, again, than a 757. So once you get to 198, I guess, is really the first place where 787 can taxi on it. It's 197, which is less, so that's Echo 3 Tango. But really, I would just read this table and base it off of that. I can send a copy of this in this channel. But but we'll also find a place for it on the website, as Shai said. So yeah, any questions about this?
So one thing that's popped up already with people that I talked to when this came out is we have so many heavy aircraft, the FedEx, the UPS, those guys that are down on the south cargo ramp, and for so long we've just been taxiing them straight down Charlie to Charlie 8 for 2-8 left departures. So we're going to have to think about that when we're taxiing people. We're going to have to taxi them across 2-8 left over to Bravo. So just keep that in mind if we're gonna actually simulate. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of pilots, they don't really care. They'll drive on the grass, and if they take out a taxiway light, it's not a big deal in the sim. So, but if we're gonna mirror real world procedures, like I would have to spend some time watching, watching flight radar as much as I can to see these big guys taxiing and see where they taxi them the most. I imagine it would be Echo to Bravo, crossing 2-8 left there at Echo, but that'll be a fun one once we start having to cross a bunch of people because they're too wide to go between the Air National Guard and the runway there. That's what it is. It's the little the shed there for the Air National Guard that restricts it.
This is something I would definitely think about during events as well. You're gonna have to start crossing aircraft a lot more during. Sorry, in case you have a heavy departing from the south and it's west flow. So for the controllers who are interested in working events, definitely keep that in mind and start like brainstorming solutions to get around that. But yeah, are there any other questions? I know this one is pretty short, or I guess went pretty short, but the other next few ones shouldn't be. Yeah, it's weird.
That was one of the things that was brought up.
The chart is. I think the chart is helpful, but it's definitely.
Look, I think Tanner did a wonderful job, but yeah,
I agree.
It could be easier to read.
No, it's definitely, it trips you up if you're trying to correspond them, but it just don't correspond the two between the.
Yeah, anyone with a half logical brain is looking at that, going, okay, 118 feet is an Embraer 75, or 198 feet. I mean, whoops.
Yeah, much love to Tanner for making this.
Yeah, no, it's super great. It's like arts and crafts time done really well.
For the seating between the islands, so good. This is 740. Yeah. So no, I think Drew kind of just answered that. For really 747s and A330s, and I guess A350 and A340 cargo aircraft, if that ever happens, taxi them across to a left. But for everything else, you can keep them. John, any questions we can answer right now? Or if not, just send us an email, send us a DM, or just ask it in the policy questions, and we can be sure to help you. Okay, yeah, cool. Just let us know. We can answer your questions. But yeah, that's really all I had to cover, and hopefully people can kind of see that the changes to this aren't that major and really reduce your workload a lot as a ground and delivery controller with the reduction or removal of Pearson operations for ground and delivery. So yeah, thanks for coming out. If no one else had any other questions, so I don't think Alex has a question. Aren't you working right now?
I have a question. It's a standard CSE question though.
I'm afraid we can't answer those, but we do have a pre-recorded Pre-recorded tape of, I think, an answer to that question.
The original. It's actually the question itself, I believe.
Oh, it is the question. It doesn't have the answer.
Anyway,
Oh.
no, we won't go there. We're changing. New culture.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Ameya too for putting this together. I really appreciate it. It's super handy to have sessions like this where we can all come together and everybody can ask questions more of as a group rather than just individually in the SOP questions forums that we've got. But yeah, this is invaluable. So thank you guys all for taking time out of your evening to come and listen to what Ameya had to say. And if you do come up with any other questions, as Ameya has said, feel free to reach out to anyone on the training staff as well as myself or Matt. So yeah, that's it.
Hamish, I think so. Class 6. Where are you? Oh, are you getting class 6 isn't based on that? Let's pull this up. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that might be actually a pretty good resource to use. Well, I would be careful because it is. Yeah, it's FA. Okay. Yeah, you could totally use that then, Hamish.
That's actually really good. I'm gonna go ahead and
Yeah.
copy that link for my own personal use later.
Great find. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for coming.
I'm gonna go ahead and
No
end
one
the
else had any other
recording.
questions. Yeah.